not
Start
shifting gears
recording.
on you. It's the same thing. I just use different words. Cool. So, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got to this topic. Several months ago, I was kind of passing. You know how you watch some TV shows, you flip channels, you don't really watch it, you kind of listen to it, and you know, like Cops. I know who you are. You see the you kind of turn it on, you go, oh, what's happening there? But this was a Discovery Channel, and it was Mighty Ships. You guys familiar with that program? Mighty Ships, they document, do documentaries on some of these massive ships. And this one in particular is the U.S. Aircraft carrier. There it is right there, in somebody's squadron. And what caught my ear, I've been thinking about great teams and what makes great teams. You know, how do we get there with our organization, with our teams? And was kind of passively watching this show, and what caught my ear, they were talking about Commander Mark Preston, who actually, the reason it caught my ear is because I actually know the guy. Didn't know he was on the program, but he's a fighter pilot, an F-18 fighter pilot on the Nimitz. And what they were doing is they were talking about their squadron and the team, right? And the importance of them performing well with one another as a squadron. And he, as a commander, a senior pilot, they get new pilots that come right out of flight school. They come on the they do all their ground training, and then they come on the carrier and land for the very first time. Probably pretty daunting, right? But so they mentor, these senior pilots mentor these young pilots that come in. And if you think about the business that they do as fighter pilots, and their job is life and death. Ours isn't, okay, just so you're clear. Hopefully, I mean, we're not even in the medical field, right? So we're probably not saving lives. Might be helping people save money, and that's cool. But these senior pilots have a vested interest in elevating the game of those junior pilots, right? Because they're training for what? For combat, right? And it is dangerous business, not only the training, but when they go into combat. So he talked about very extensively with these young pilots that the squadron is only as good as the weakest link, right? Or the most junior pilot. So he probably was more politically correct than the weakest link, okay? They've had all the ground training, whatever. But as it turns out, the one gentleman, or the one pilot, the junior pilot that he was mentoring, kind of took him under his wing. They worked out, I talked to him at one of my son's lacrosse tournaments, and he said, that guy I was talking to, no longer on the squadron. Shortly after that program was filmed, they kind of, I forget the term he used, but basically said, we moved him out of the squadron. Why? Because he was a danger to the other members of the squadron. So they couldn't elevate this guy's game, right? Maybe start thinking about our teams. Are we talked a lot about ownership yesterday, right? And accountability. Are we taking ownership to elevate the game of each other within our team? And that's what this talk is all about. So what makes a high-performing team? I mean, we've all been a part of one, hopefully. Who's been a part of a great team? Yeah. Whether it's a sports team, professional team, or work professional. Anybody in professional sports? Okay. Probably wouldn't be here, right? So what makes those teams great? And why is it so hard to replicate, right? You ever thought about that? So you're going to do that now. I want you at your tables to talk about what makes teams great. I'll give you a couple minutes, talk with your table mates, and then we'll do a poll here and we'll get some of that feedback. Okay, just take a couple minutes, talk about what makes great teams.
Josh makes great
What? Yeah. Do you guys trust me or what? What? I am a great team member. You guys miss me when I'm not in the office, do you?
On the one day of the week that you come to the office, it seems quiet if you're not there.
I'm about to change it.
Are you a man without a team?
Well, yeah, but I don't want to get in the shower.
You're right over there. It's open. Nobody's sitting there.
Well, you can scoot up. Okay, don't worry about the camera.
There's a whole
About
open.
the interaction.
All right. Did every table talk about at least 2 or 3 things? Okay. So what I'd like for us to do is, again, I want to get some of that feedback up on this wall. If this is your first time, welcome.
They're gonna put my name in there.
pollev.com/agilcamp and type in one word that describes the behavior characteristic of high performance.
That's okay. Well, my text might not go through.
Like texting this stuff? Yeah. Also, when you text, if it goes over, you can do it 2 ways.
I can't connect.
Apparently I am unstable. I mean, the connection is. There we go. That's right.
Roxanne made it too, by the way.
Sash made a pretty convincing
How do they
case.
get the little zoom icon?
So we're starting to see trust is a big
could throw an
theme.
emoji.
Respect.
Oh,
Great hair. Apparently, with great hair comes great teams. Awesome. Some of you here clearly aren't on a great team. So collaboration, trust, and respect are a couple items or a couple words that you guys are starting to resonate with this group. Communication, transparency. Lack of one bad apple. Yeah, that's an interesting concept, lack of one bad apple. I mean, I'm not sure what you meant, but what I read into that is you've got kind of what I was talking about with the story of Commander Preston. If you don't have, if you're not working to elevate everyone's game and they're just purely an anchor on that team, then perhaps it's going to stifle the team's performance, right? So it's something that we need to take responsibility for and own that, as we've talked about in previous sessions. We have a role to play as a team member, right? You guys believe that? Yeah, we have a responsibility. We bring in new people all the time. And they couldn't possibly know our systems or the way our processes or policies, what have you. It is our responsibility to bring them up to speed to be a high performer within our team, right? So, thanks for that. So how do you know you're on a good team? Is there a point in time that you go, oh, because we did this, we are awesome? Or is it maybe something that's just fleeting, you see it once and we don't see it again? Is it something that you, as team members, are deliberately working towards? Do you know how to get there? Right? We talked about some things that, we talked about trust, we talked about communication, we talked about collaboration. These are things that you said on the board, right? Respect. Are we actively working towards those things to elevate the team's performance? right? Do we even know how to track it? Or is this true for you? Dilbert talks about trust. I only trust you if you perform well, right? So, because I'm on a Navy theme apparently, I want to show you a quick video about the Blue Angels, which in my mind, I mean, I've seen the Thunderbirds, I've seen the Blue Angels, both are awesome. They have a really cool video with respect to high performance, okay? So I'll show you that real quick. I think. How do we do this? Sorry.
Fox, updated weather before 0 and 10. We on the airfield and airspace. You are clear for takeoff. Have a good one. Thanks. All clear for takeoff. Close. Ready to go, boss. We're clear for takeoff. Going 240. Check your weather break. I'll take a trip to get all this air on. That's the very nice and
So what did you get out of that? What are the Blue Angels, what do they find is necessary for high performance for them?
Center
Synergy. Oops.
Communication.
Synergy, communication,
Right.
trust.
Everyone
else?
has to do exactly what's expected with a great amount of precision to it.
Yeah.
And the courage to speak up if you don't understand.
Courage to speak up if you don't understand. Drive to get better. The drive to get better.
To agree on a common goal.
What's that?
To agree on a common goal.
Agree on a common goal. Yeah, shared vision, right? Yeah. One of the things for me that kind of stood out each time I see this is, you know, they talked about earning the right to wear the crest. Do we do that on our teams? I mean, if we came into work each day and said, you know what, I want to earn the right to work on this team, or whatever your team is, right? Would we behave differently if I was earning a job each and every day? I mean, think about that. I'm not looking for an answer, but they do. Each and every day, they want to bring it each and every day. They want to up the ante each and every day. Kind of that's one of the things that stuck out for me. And why does that not translate maybe into the business world, right? But think about that. If we had to earn it each and every day, what would we do different? So, the teams that you're working on, do they have some of those or all of those characteristics that they talked about with the Blue Angels? Yeah? If some of them are missing, what are you doing about it to fill that gap, to move you towards high performance? So here's what we know. There are over, I heard a talk, and you can kind of validate some of the information, but they talked about there have been 200 different things identified as the one thing necessary for high performance. 200 different things identified as the one thing, right? So doing a quick research, you guys can do it yourself and you'll find the same thing. 6 hallmarks of high-performing teams, 12 habits of high-performing teams, 7 principles, 9 characteristics. It goes on and on. There's all kinds of stuff, and I'm not saying any of that's right or wrong. There's lots of overlap on each one of them, right? You'll see trust, you'll see common vision, you'll see putting the team first, psychological. You'll see all these different things as being very important. Google, as part of Project Aristotle, they did a study, an extensive study within Google around high performance, because they want to replicate that just like any other organization. If they've got one really great team, they want to replicate that across the entire org, right? And so they wanted to find out what makes those teams great. And what they found in their study was, and I just lost it, psychological safety. You guys know what psychological safety is? Just the simplest of definition is being willing to stick your neck out there without risk of getting it chopped off, right? Do we feel safe in our work environment to take risks? I mean, let's be honest, we're a very risk-averse organization, and for a lot of good reasons. But when it comes to, if you came to the experimentation, if it comes to trying things that's different, and challenging things that's maybe slightly different than what we've done before, are we willing to take that chance or just kind of float through the day? Because, hey, it's always worked this way, never gotten in trouble for it, so that's cool, right? I just want to get through the day unscathed. Another study, Gama Sutra, anybody familiar with that website? It's any video gamers? It's all about video games, right? And they have news and maybe cheats or whatever, I don't know. But they did a study as well within their organization, and they came up with a shared vision as the one thing that was necessary for greatness within their teams. in both organizations, Google and Gamasutra, were able to show a high correlation of, for Google, when there's a high level of psychological safety, high correlation to high performance. Low safety, low performance, right? And same with Gamasutra. If there's not a shared vision, probably low performing team. And so they work very hard to elevate each other's games. The good news is there's lots of models to help guide your path. Two of which that we use within our, Aaron and I as coaches, is this one here. You guys familiar with this one? The one on the bottom right? This is Bruce Tuckman's team maturation model. It's forming, team gets together, then they storm, there's conflict perhaps, then they start to norm, figure out how to work with one another, and then there's performing. But you have to go through each of those stages, right? Tuckman also talks about as you go through each stage, and maybe you get close to performing, and then we go, you know what? We're going to take you off of this team and pluck you into this team. It's a brand new team, even though it's just one person. Dynamics are very different now. And you will go back through forming and storming, hopefully quicker, because it's only one change, perhaps. But we potentially slow down that process, if you will, to high performance by doing that. This one here is Drexler's Civet model, and it talks about the 7 stages to get into, stage 6 is performance, high performance. But it talks about you have to go through each of these stages in order to get through here. And this last one is renewal. So there are models out there that help guide us. And going back to a previous slide about are we intentional with respect to moving ourselves to high performance? Some teams maybe yes, other teams just kind of rolling dice and going, man, I hope it works, right? Or it's just going to magically happen at some point. I just know it, right? These models give us a guide and help move us along, hopefully.
Chris, in your experience then with the forming story, forming, how do you gauge that on a team?
Like where they're at.
Yeah.
Well, there's how do you gauge it? There's different things here, like
Hey, Chris, what was the question?
How do you gauge it? How do you gauge a scrum team if you were not actively part of it, but you just wanted to kind of get a pulse across the board on different scrum teams, try to see where everybody's at?
Yeah.
Does each team identify it themselves, or is there a measurement that you can do?
So for each of these models, it's observable behaviors, right? And so being able to identify, which is somewhat subjective, right? So what I view as maybe activities within storming, you might view, no, we're past that. I don't view that as storming at all, right? And so then there's dialogue that ensues from there to say, here's what we could potentially do to either validate or move us forward, right? Same with Drexler's Civet. Drexler's Civet is a little more, in my opinion, a little more concrete. The thing it does for us, though, as an organization or a team, is that we're speaking the same language, right? Because how many of you maybe in your one-on-ones talk about, you know what, you guys aren't quite high performing yet. And then as a team member, you go, no, I thought we were. I thought we were kicking butt. So what do you mean by high performing? We're speaking a different language, right? You have different expectations perhaps, and this helps bridge those expectations, helps give us a common language for which to speak. Drexler's Civet talks about behaviors that are resolved or unresolved, observable behaviors. Again, dialogue, we need to have a dialogue because what I observe may be different from your observations. Does that help? Okay. So, you have this one on your table, okay? Now, what you'll find in this particular model is that, just start with stage 1. Let's say in stage 1, I've got maybe one of those items that I feel is resolved on my team, and maybe one that's unresolved, And then I look at stage 2 and I see maybe an item or two that's resolved and maybe an item or two that's unresolved. So you'll start to see, well, where am I? Am I in 1 or am I in 2, right? You get what I'm saying? If you haven't fully resolved all activities in 1, though you're tiptoeing in 2, you're not quite there. You're still in 1, or wherever you are in this model, right? Does that make sense? Okay, because that's generally where we get questions with respect to this model. So here's what I want you to do. You've got the model. This is an individual activity. What I'd like for you to do is think about your team, whatever team you're on. You don't need to be on a scrum team. Most of us are members of a team. Even if it's like Aaron and I, we are a team of 2, right? It's a big team. It's hard to communicate. Think about where your team is with respect to this model. Look at the resolved and unresolved characteristics or behaviors. And then mark on the sheet where your team is. Go through step 1, then 2, you get the drill, and say, yeah, we fully resolved this. Maybe we're still working on this thing, and circle the thing you're still working on. Does that make sense? So I'll give you a few minutes to kind of walk through this. I'd like for you to get at least through step 4 or 5. So I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes. So don't overthink it. Cool?
I'm thinking 5 or less. There's a lot of unresolved, so I'll step back to number 4. Take a picture and blow it up.
We can simplify it.
Okay.
I mean, or you can Google it. It's all right here, nice. Yeah. Yeah, direct specific.
How we doing? Did you guys get through it? How many of you are looking at your teams and going, yeah, we are at stage 6, high performance? And honestly are able to say, we've resolved each of these and we have none left unresolved? Yeah?
No, I don't know.
Okay. So what about, how many stuck at 1? Nobody good? All right. So here's what I'd like to do from that. Ideally, you guys walk away with something that you can do tomorrow with your team, right? Perhaps using this model and maybe some ideas. We were able to demonstrate yesterday that there are a ton of great ideas within this room, and we want to leverage those, continue leveraging those great ideas and sharing with one another. At the end of the day, we all work for Team Nelnet, right? And so we want to help, whether we're on the same team or not, shouldn't matter. But if I'm stuck for example, if I'm stuck in stage 3 and you're on stage 5, there's probably things that your team has done, hopefully, to move you beyond 3 and 4 to get to 5, right? That's what conversation I want to have at our tables, is for us to share, what did you do to resolve this? Because I would love to take that back to my team, and maybe that's an activity we can do, maybe it's an exercise, whatever it is, but be able to take it back to our team. So what I'd like for you to do in this next couple of minutes is, at your tables, discuss with one another some items that will, if you've got some resolved items, right, and I've got an unresolved one, let's talk about that and talk about some actions that I can take back to my team. Does that make sense? So share with one another with where you are, what's unresolved, and say, hey, I got that one resolved, here's what we did to resolve it. Right? Cool? Okay, I'll give you about 5 minutes to work through that, and we'll see where we get.
All right, who's where?
I really think we can check up. I think we have some results.
So essentially 3, like what?
Well, the clear integrated goals and things not necessarily there all the time. I was more focused on the resolve and what was missing from there.
And when you look at the unresolved ones, it's what it puts you back. You know, so if you don't have any, if you have some of the unresolved, essentially moves you back a spot. So essentially that. I think from looking under 5, I think what we have unresolved moves us to 4. And Josh, what do you think? What? Missed deadlines, conflict, confusion. Under 5, it's what we have, which essentially moves it to 4, which is really true. How will we do it? You know, that's what we always get stuck on. So.
For the first time, second.
You guys don't have team agreements?
We do. We do. Haven't updated since before I
But I think coming back to
No. When you have new team members, you have to go through a team agreement. Does anyone go with you through a team
told
agreement?
where they were.
Oh, she's great. Who's your scrum master?
At the time, it was this guy.
Oh, this fella? Oh my gosh. Exactly. It's okay to blame others sometimes. No. That's always we did. But then we disagree on it, like we don't execute. Yeah.
I think since we have so many newer people on our team, I think revisiting the team agreement, possibly making adjustments to it is going to be a good kind of level set, and then from there we need to build on that, keep it in the forefront.
I would say probably scrap it all together and start from scratch on that kid. You know.
think that's
Out of how many people? Okay, scrap it all together.
You start with a blank sheet. There's some things that are gonna muddle on that.
Right, I would, whatever Scrum Master is, you should start over, meaning like from scratch. Totally go that route. I'm not gonna just revisit, yep, this is what it is. Hey, you good? Yep, I'm good. People are just gonna be almost entirely disengaged versus trying to think through. Yeah, so it's like, I pulled it up, yep, I'm good with that, I'm good with that, I'm good with that, you know, versus it's like, no, you come up with the stuff you want, you know. You can cheat, I can care less. But you come up, you know, be engaged as people. And that's the hero. Am I right? Yes. Anyhow. Huh? Good. So yeah, we'll do about this whole bunch too.
We'll have watch Kate drive.
What?
I told him he was buying a phone. He said he's got other things to do.
So I guess that's a no then. What are you doing?
All right. Who got something that they can take away and take back to their teams? Anyone? Cool. One. Awesome.
That's Jared.
Fail. I was hoping for at least two. What are some things that you guys talked about that you can do? What are some things that you guys talked about or actions that you can take or maybe even questions to ask that will help move you forward on this model? Anyone? Yeah.
One thing we talked about at this table is